You're listening to the Common Descent Podcast. And welcome to Spookulative Evolution.
Hello, David.
Hello, Will.
And hello, listeners. Welcome to episode 4 of Spook-E 2024.
The last one.
Last one.
This is the final of our 4 spooky episodes before we do QT, which is also coming up.
Yes. And as is tradition, we saved one of the weirdest for last. This year we're doing tiny monsters, so inevitably we had to do some sort of imp.
Sure.
But imp is not actually a thing.
Right. It's a very catch-all
phrase.
Yeah,
it's similar to what we talked about with fairies, but fairy is a term, but imps are often fairies. Imp, when I looked up imp, it just was it's a little mischievous dude. I did not find a lot of imp, capital I. So what we went with was the redcap, which is often described as very imp-like. Mm-hmm. What we will be doing is evolving this monster to see how could we get something similar to it via natural selection and biological processes to ask the question, how do you make a monster with evolution? This is just for fun. This is just silly. We're not being uber serious with the evolution, nor are we trying to give a definitive version of the monster. So without further ado, let's talk about redcaps. Redcaps, I feel like, are one of those where people either are going to be very excited or have no clue what a redcap is.
I have no clue what a redcap is.
Yep.
That's not entirely true. I have a little bit of a clue what a redcap is.
Redcaps are a well-known, evil, fairy-esque, imp-esque creature. Kind of goblin-y, kind of gnome-ish. Redcaps are sometimes powries, or pories, however you would pronounce that in the more traditional sense. I also saw things called them red combs and bloody caps.
Okay.
These are specifically malevolent, truly evil.
Monsters. The most monstrous of this year's monsters.
Yes, and one of the most monstery of all the monsters we've done, where their purpose is to do harm. They're on this earth to do bad. They are evil incarnate in many cases. They are often very specifically murderous. They are here to kill people. They are specifically famous from folklore in the border area of Anglo-Scottish borders, said to inhabit typically ruined structures, famously castles and towers and stuff like that. They inhabit these ruins, they are their homes. Often they inhabit spaces with a history of tyranny or violence, places where terrible things happened. Redcaps are drawn to or become born there in some versions. And they get their name from soaking the cap they wear in the blood of their victims.
Right.
That's why they turn red.
So that their enemies can't see them bleed.
Yep. So the Anglo-Scottish border is a border in the United Kingdom separating Scotland from England. A border with a history of wars and battles and violence.
And castles.
Yep. It runs about 96 miles. And for centuries, this area has been a lawless area where, the laws of the lands on either side didn't fully meet up to the border because it becomes harder and harder to enforce the closer you get to enemy territory. So lots of battles, lots of violence, lots of lawlessness, very famous, and drew this myth to this area of these malevolent beings housing in the ruins of this warring area. They are sometimes considered to be part of the Unseelie Court, which we talked about in the fairies episode, are the dark fairies.
The bad fairies.
In Scottish folklore. They are here and wish to do harm upon people. That is what they're here to do. They are described like many fairy-esque creatures as little people, but these have a bit more creaturey and monstery features. Often described as short, thick-set elf-like creatures with long, prominent teeth. Many of their pictures show them with teeth hanging outside of their mouth. Skinny fingers armed with talons. So not just nails, but talons.
Claws.
Like eagles, one of them described.
Yeah.
Large eyes that are often fiery red color, so evil red eyes, as is often the case with monsters. Grizzly hair streaming down their shoulders was one description. And this is where we get less creaturey, very consistently depicted with iron boots and wielding weapons, particularly like pike staffs. which are like a spear but with an axe head on the end.
Mm-hmm.
And then famously, redcap.
Yes.
The overall story goes that they hide and live in these ruins, and when travelers take refuge in these ruins to rest while moving through the borderlands, they will kill them either by like throwing stones or stomping on them with their iron boots, and then soak their cap in the blood to make it red. In some legends, the redcaps have to kill regularly to maintain a soaked cap, that this is important to their survival and existence. If their cap dries out, they die or disappear. It was often noted that they had unusual strength, that they could overpower humans very easily. They were unusually strong for their size. In some of the stories, they were said to be able to be driven off by like words of scripture or brandishing a crucifix, and this would cause them to either flee or disappear. In some versions, it was noted that they would vanish in flames and leave behind a large tooth.
Huh.
Yeah. There are variants that add certain features and have slightly different names. One tale of the redcap in Perthshire depicts him as more of a benign little person living up in a room high in Grandhully Castle and bestows good fortune to those who see or hear him. So there are some benevolent versions. Redcaps in Dutch folklore are more akin to brownies or like household spirits or hobgoblins, which are also in Scottish folklore, come in at night and do chores and stuff. So sometimes they are a bit more just general small people that live in buildings. In one village in Cornwall, Zenor, fairies were often described as redcaps for wearing scarlet caps but not blood-soaked. So sometimes redcaps have been terms for just more benign fairy-like creatures. Other times just more general ghosty type creatures. In the Blackett Tower, it was said to be haunted by a traditional ghost known as Old Redcap or Bloody Bell, and was just a phantom. But typically they are elf-esque, small elf-esque, mean, taloned and fanged creatures with iron boots and some kind of weapon, typically a pike staff, that kill travelers to use their blood to bloody their caps.
Mm-hmm.
The most famous tale is Robin Redcap and William de Solus. William de Solus was a powerful lord in Hermitage Castle in South Selkirk, which was very close to the border, and was a cruel landlord. All the people under him were treated poorly, his tenants did not have many rights, and he used them for his experiments into black arts quite regularly. And just an evil, evil overlord, and at some point in his practicing was approached by Robin Redcap, or Redcap Sly, which is a named redcap.
Mm-hmm.
In this version, it said that the creature looked like an old man with long fangs and offered William, if William allows him to have free reign of the castle and protection in his land, he will give William powers, particularly protection from weapons and harm. And the only one that'll ever be able to hurt him is unless he is bound in a 3-stranded rope made of sand. Which is one of those I like where it's an impossible task.
Yeah, I was going to say, that seems real hard to do.
Yeah, so that's kind of the whole point.
Yes.
William agrees, becomes even more powerful, and starts to see himself unto a god now that he's invulnerable, and is just wreaking havoc on the land. The people go to Thomas the Rhymer, who I think is like a famous folkloric character. To get his help, he makes them a 3-stranded belt made of lead that is hollow, so it can be filled with sand.
Oh, clever.
Yeah. They go tie up William, and when they have him at their mercy, Robin Redcap is nowhere to be seen. They kill William by boiling him alive. In reality, he was imprisoned in Dumbarton Castle, so evidently he was a historical character.
Oh, interesting.
An actual person, and just died while imprisoned. After William was killed, Robin Redcap disappears, but legends persist that he returns to the castle, and it is thought that he is looking for a treasure that it is said he left somewhere in the castle or the surrounding lands. And so in this version, it takes on more of like a powerful magic character.
Yeah, it's a person. It's that character in the fairy tale who is the witch or whoever that shows up and does magic favors.
And so this is definitely the from what I found, the most famous redcap story, like of a specific redcap, but never is it actually referenced to them doing the redcap stuff.
Right.
Now, it may have been insinuated that, that's why he wanted Run of the Castle, so he could go do his normal redcap stuff.
Sure.
But that's
or
never...
It could also just be the term redcap being used for this character.
Now, this is a shorter history section. We're not quite done, but that's most of the actual history of these creatures.
Yeah.
And so, as always, like we said, we like to save the weird ones for last. So, the other stuff that there is to say about redcaps is that they are common in D&D and stuff.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, I decided to look into those to see what they had. Redcaps in D&D, still very similar, need to kill. Mm-hmm. They are evil, evil, evil creatures. True evil. In this version, it said that they absorb a little bit of the essence of those they kill, and they get stronger over time. Their pointed caps need to remain red and blood-soaked, or else they will disappear. I also found that it was noted that they refuse to use other redcaps' blood because they think they'll get cursed.
Okay.
So it has to be other people. In this, they noted that it takes a cold iron weapon to overcome their durability. So we get that fairy weakness to cold iron, which I never saw noted in the historical things.
Yeah.
Even though I did see some things note them as unseelie court fairies, potentially.
They are fairies.
So it's likely that they might share some of those same fairy weaknesses and weakness to cold iron. But the only weakness found in the old stuff was the scripture and the crucifix and stuff.
Yeah.
So it depends on how fairy they are.
That they're, to what they are susceptible to.
In D&D, they are indeed fae.
Yes.
They are fae creatures. They are of the fairy courts and fairy worlds. One of the abilities that redcaps said have is if they throw like a bullet from a sling, it has extra energy. It explodes in like a green burst of eldritch energy. And so they can infuse their weapons, their shots. And when it dies, a redcap vanishes completely, leaving behind one tooth.
Oh, interesting.
And it has magical power. Whoever wore it is seen to be a little more favorable by other fae, especially other redcaps, and it's worth 1,000 gold.
Huh.
Yeah.
Wonder whose tooth it is.
Right? I assume it's the redcap's tooth.
You would think.
But I like that, and I don't remember finding anything of the old myths about them leaving a tooth if the tooth had any abilities. But that goes back to those old myths that when you defeat a redcap or drive them off,
you get a tooth.
They leave a large tooth.
That's their loot. That's the loot drop.
Yep, exactly. They have a canonical loot drop, and it made it into D&D. They also added some info to the Society of Redcaps. They're natural loners. They don't tend to band together, but when they do, it's always in odd numbers.
Okay.
Because they evidently think even numbers are unlucky.
Okay.
And that there are some that will occasionally dip their cap in demon ichor, known as a madcap, and are especially more violent and volatile and dangerous, and incinerate upon death. They also had life cycles.
Interesting.
Which is always interesting to see what's added there.
Yeah.
There are 2 life cycles mentioned, and it seems like there was an older version and a newer version, and in the canon it suggested that there was an older idea in universe than a newer understanding.
Has been updated.
Yep. In the older version, redcaps are asexual, and they spawn via budding.
Okay.
Yep. This only happens once or twice in their lives, and they start growing a hump on their back for like 6 months or so, and eventually the hump falls off, and head and limbs pop out, and a fully grown redcap is born.
So like Gremlins again.
Yep.
Yep.
Yep. In the newer version, redcaps arose from the earth, born from bloodlust itself.
Okay.
So on land where blood is spilt.
Yeah, like on a battlefield or something.
Yes. A newborn will grow, resembling a small blood-stained mushroom with a red cap.
Oh.
And as they are bathed in moonlight, it will leap from the ground, fully formed, armed, dressed, and ready to go. So that one has a little bit more with the old version of they are drawn or come from places with a history of violence.
Yeah.
There are also Pathfinder redcaps, which are mostly the same in lots of ways, but slightly different in certain ones. Both often are carrying weapons, but I think in both of these, they're typically carrying scythes.
Okay. Similar to the
pike staff.
The pike staff.
Yeah. But historically, it was usually pike staff. In Pathfinder, they note that they are vicious hunters, but they don't eat flesh.
Just for the fun of it?
Just for the fun and to soak their caps in the blood.
Sure.
They will drink the blood, it said, and suck marrow from the bone, but they don't eat the meat.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure. Sanguivores.
Yeah. This one noted that they are extremely protective of their caps, even sewing them onto their own head, which is horribly delightfully horrible. And that these versions are thought to mate only after successful murders. And females give birth to twins or triplets, and the siblings constantly fight for the respect and attention of their parents, with only usually one or two surviving. So that's all there is really about redcaps.
Yeah, a bit of sort of old-timey lore and a bit of a modern twist on that lore.
Yeah, they are a very characteristic, evil, goblin-esque creature.
And they have a lot of very specific idiosyncrasies and features to them.
Yes, absolutely. So this is our weird one for the year. As is always the case, magic disclaimer. We can only evolve what is physically possible to evolve. This one, there's not as much magic to worry about.
No, but there is magic inherent in the lore. For sure.
So, just keep that in mind that we can't evolve everything. So, redcaps.
Yeah, this is weird.
Mm-hmm.
That's a weird... Right off the bat, I'm intrigued about their reliance on blood.
Yes.
So... There are plenty of animals that drink blood.
Mm-hmm.
We had a whole episode about this, episode 134. Usually those are animals that are accessing the blood with their mouth parts.
Yes.
And to ingest the blood, as opposed to bathing, essentially, sticking it on top of your head and putting it in contact with your body. But there could be an angle here for, like, the nutrients that are found in blood or something in that vein.
The idea that comes to mind, because I could see something drinking blood, but then also, after it's had its fill, so to speak, using it as the same way that, like, things will roll in dung or will roll in certain materials to, quote unquote, decorate themselves.
Yeah.
Either with scent or with the color of it or both, as a dominance display, as a way to attract mates. There's the whole, it's why dogs, if you let them into a field and they find like a cow patty, they'll often roll in it because the smell, they want to get that smell because for them it's an intriguing and useful smell.
Yeah. The decorating angle is an interesting one because the other thing that stands out to me about the description of redcaps is that they are apparently tool users.
Yes.
Potentially, depending on what angle we want to go. But they're carrying weapons, they're wearing that hat, they've got clothing that is sort of associated with them. For our purposes in Spook-E, we won't be having them be actually clothed, because that gets us outside the bounds of the fun speculative evolution type thing we're doing.
Absolutely.
But there are also plenty of animals that collect things, that will carry stuff with them, or collect things, or collect smells, like you said.
I also am intrigued by the fact that they always are wearing iron boots.
Mm-hmm.
And very often it was described as them kicking or stomping. And there are animals that use kicks as a defensive or attack.
Yes. I did have that thought when you mentioned talons.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that was describing it on the hands.
Mm-hmm.
But there are absolutely birds that will use their feet as a defense mechanism, as kicking or slashing with their feet in defense. And many birds do often have powerful feet that they're walking around on and slashing with. There are also birds that collect stuff and birds that use tools.
Yes, this is very true. If we're wanting to go for something that's kind of person-shaped, there's, of course, primates, even though we've already done primates this year.
Primates are available.
The other ones that come to mind are things like badgers and stuff, where they don't walk around on their hind legs, but many of them can often, like, stand up.
Yeah, and they have digging claws.
Yep. And they are often, like, a lot of mustelids, the badgers and wolverines and your overall group like that, are nasty. Like, they are aggressive.
Yes.
And their form of defense is a good offense, that they are just going to bully away anyone who is bothering them.
They also have prominent teeth. Which is something that the bird angle, for example, would be lacking.
Yep.
There's no teeth there.
I also just like the picture because, like, a bunch of species of badgers have white stripes. Yes. And in some versions, it was described that their caps are white caps made red by the blood. So you could have this thing where it's like, yeah, if you caught a wild redcap and gave it a bath, you'd find out that it's actually a white cap.
Yes.
But because of the way they roll themselves in their kills, their white hair on their head is stained.
Yeah. I do like the idea of acquiring that sort of bloody mark as a sign of physical prowess or whatnot. Or it could even be that the cap itself is some sort of secondary display structure that takes on a reddish color. Ooh, it could even be, we don't have to go this direction, but I like the idea of them sort of rolling around and stuff the way that dogs do. That would also be a very fitting thing for mustelids to do.
Yes.
They're also carnivorans, that group of animals. But it could also be a color that comes from the food that they eat.
Yes, absolutely.
That they are diverting certain pigments. Or another angle is that there are mammals that will display by flushing certain parts of their body with blood, with their own blood flow, to create that bright red color, right? The baboon butts and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So the idea of it being a display feature, and also there could be an angle there of if their cap isn't sufficiently bloody, you don't see them. And that could either be because they don't survive, like that's necessary for their survival for some reason, or it could also be that the ones without the red caps just look like a normal version of whatever animal this is.
Yeah.
So they're not, it's like, oh yeah, you only ever see them with the red caps. Well, yeah, you only ever see that morph of them. It has the red cap. Other than that, it just looks like whatever animal it is.
Yeah, that is an interesting...
So that was a few different ideas of how you could achieve that.
And even if it still is them rolling in something, they could still have particular plumage or fur or structure there that enhance... Like, I'm thinking of, like, moose purposely getting stuff on their antlers.
Yeah.
Like, they will get a bunch of foliage and stuff to cover their antlers as part of their mating display. And it's like, yeah, you just put a bunch of trash on your head.
Yes.
But that's on purpose, and your headgear holds it.
Moose also get their, like, the bloody antlers when the velvet is coming off.
Yep. Which could be another way to go with, like, does something you're doing cause damage to a particular area?
Yeah.
But that area is made to be damaged, so it's not hurting you, but it's gross looking.
Yes, I also wondered that same thing.
I like the rolling in your kill because that is what they do.
Yeah, well, and I also that brings us to the violence aspect, and also the fact that they are seemingly associated with violent places.
Oh, if we did go with something Wolverine or even like Tasmanian Devil-esque, like something in
some
that
small mean little mammal,
scrappy little thing, and it was like a scavenger.
Yeah.
That, like, they still could kill, but if it was very apt at taking down carcasses, sticking its head in there and getting gore just all over its face and nastiness.
Yeah.
That also could fit in with the, like, it doesn't even eat the meat. It goes after the bones and viscera.
Yeah, it's chomping into the internal spaces.
Yep. That would give a reason for the head to get all nasty.
Yes.
I like that.
That is a pretty fun idea. I also like the notion that they are, because we're naming, the mammals that we're naming are mammals that are often quite territorial.
Yes.
Or quite competitive with each other, which could be that violent part of their nature, especially if it sounds like these are associated with a particular type of place or structure.
That's what I was just thinking.
If it's a castle or an old ruin or something, that is the place this animal makes its den.
Well, if they're regularly like cave dwellers.
Yeah, that's true.
That would make a castle very fitting.
And if we're going back to the decoration idea, if it's not just using this as like a den, but maybe this is its space for attracting mates. There are birds that will do this, that will clear out a space or build a nest or decorate a space, and that is there to attract others to come to that space and hopefully mate with them. It could be that this is I have selected these ruins and I'm going to keep it clear of all competition. I'm going to attack anybody who comes near, but also I'm going to gather up stuff that I might find around here. And that could include weapons or clothing that they're picking up off of this battlefield that they are inhabiting.
Which does fit with, like, Robin Redcap having a hoard of treasure.
Yes.
There is...
That's true.
Precedent for that. I also like the idea of if they are territorial, that humans passing through get attacked. Because this happens with, like, saltwater crocodiles that are very territorial and attack crocs that enter. And we are... not only food-sized, but also young croc-sized. So it's just either way, they are going to very likely be aggressive toward us if we go into their territory, because we're either competition or food. And I could see that something here where it's like, redcaps are aggressively defensive. And, like if they get attacked by a predator, they fight, they don't run. And if they get approached by a rival, they fight, they don't run. And humans wandering into their territory miss all the signals that would be there to say this is their territory. So now the only option is to fight. And so they get violently attacked when they go into these places, seemingly for no reason.
I like that idea, and to take it a step further, since you mentioned that maybe they are naturally cave dwellers, that they're dwelling in caves or natural shelters, and that the ruins of a building lend themselves extraordinarily well to that. The ruins tend not to be inhabited.
Yes.
So they have evolved the behavior of being really good at inhabiting those spaces. And on the one hand, if you are going to be living in spaces where humans live, being behaviorally adapted to fend off humans might be a more recent sort of adaptation. But it could also be that they are ancestrally highly adapted to deal with much larger animals.
Yes.
Because they're hanging out in caves and stuff.
They fight off bears.
You have to, in order to have your space, you have to be able to scare away a bear.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that they're going to beat a bear.
Yes.
Right.
They are willing to go toe-to-toe with a bear.
I think there was a line... This might have been a fan comic panel that someone drew that was the character Wolverine in comics talking about, like, his reputation, and he says, a Wolverine will take on a full-size bear. You hear that fact all the time, but they never tell you about who wins that fight.
Yes. Yep.
Like I said, I think that was a fan comic. But the idea that, you have to, in order to defend your space, you are instinctually driven to react with aggression towards larger animals.
Yes.
So that you get that first impression in, you be scary, you're scratching and biting and snarling at them in the hopes that they turn and walk away.
Or just that it's not worth it. This cave's not worth the hassle. Yes, you could kill me, but I'm going to make it such a chore and such a arduous task that it's not worth it.
It's like the videos you'll see of a house cat scaring a bear away.
Yeah.
Because the bear's like, all right, I don't want to deal with this.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on.
You're not reacting the way I'm expecting you to.
So I'm just going to leave.
Yes. And it is one of my favorite kind of weird facts about animals is there's a bunch of animals where attitude is a major tool for their survival. Just being aggressive, putting up a good front, putting up a stubborn front is often enough to fake it till you make it sort of thing. Like,
it would work on me.
Absolutely. There's tons of animals where, and we see this with even like small harmless animals where bluffing is a very common defense tool. I'm going to hiss, I'm going to puff up, I'm going to jump at you, and hopefully that's enough for you to go, I'll find dinner elsewhere. I'm not hungry enough for you to be worth it, so I'll keep going. And that doesn't seem like it fits with typically the way we talk about nature and behavior in animals. Yes. But having attitude and being just a real tough little dude is a viable survival strategy. So the features we're describing actually happen way more often than you might think.
Yeah.
In a lot of groups.
Well, and you invoked mustelids, which includes wolverines.
Yep.
Which are famous for fighting like wolves and bears and stuff.
Well, and as the internet has made so famous, the honey badger is famously famous for taking on fights and coming out, like, not the victor as in it defeated the other, but the other left with, like, lions and large predators that really should have had the advantage in that fight. But it's kind of that idea of, like, you can take on someone bigger than you if you act crazy enough. Like, not that I'm suggesting anyone go out and pick a fight that way, but like...
It's like that one episode of Hey Arnold.
Yes. Yep. You just have to get them to not want to finish the fight. And that's enough for you to have won the fight.
So here's another idea. This one's left field, and it's not really quite compatible with the other stuff that we've mentioned. It's also feels a little bit redundant in a certain way. It could also be, and you'll see, dear listeners, it could also be that the red cap is a mushroom.
Yes. Yep.
And that it's a parasite or a symbiote that grows on the head, and it looks and smells like blood.
That's true.
To attract insects that will collect the spores and fly away with them.
Yeah.
If the red cap animal is feeding on carrion in places where dead stuff is, that could be where it's picking up the spores because flies are dropping them off over there.
Ooh, I think I have a compromise that might combine those two.
Oh, fantastic. Because I suggested that, fully ready for us to go, that's a cool idea. Maybe someone will draw it, and then we move on.
But in the D&D version, that when they come from the ground, they start out as a mushroom. So maybe it could be one of those where it's like their fecal material promotes the growth, and they like feed on these mushrooms. But like in their dens, you find these mushrooms very often. And so they are a very common fungus in the areas where they feed and they use as latrines. So in areas where you find adult redcaps, you also find baby redcaps.
Yes, little tiny little white ones.
Yep, that are sprouting up and coming out. And it's just, they are constantly in association with each other.
Yeah.
And if they have a little red cap, because that's what it said is a little red-capped mushroom, then you get these mushrooms just... Everywhere a red cap goes, red cap mushrooms also go, and they just, surely there's some connection, and it's they feed on the mushrooms, or their poop is just the right nutritional combination that it just really is a fertilizer for these mushrooms.
So far, our red caps are a combination of our 3 previous tiny monsters, because they're aggressive mammals protecting a den space.
Yep.
Like our gremlins. They have a relationship with fungi, potentially, like our fairies. And they are in Europe.
Yep.
Like our salamanders. It does raise the interest, because I like the idea of the mustelid angle. Honey badgers are African, and wolverines are North American.
Yes.
Actually, are wolverines?
Let's double check to make sure they're not also like Russian.
Like Siberia, yeah. That's what I was wondering. Yes, they are. They are all over the north. All right,
that's doable.
That's true. All right, after a quick Google, they are also in Europe and Asia. They're way northern. So wolverines don't live in England and Scotland, but they're not super far away from there. This could be a branch off of a lineage like that.
They're also like European badgers, but they are also famously not spunky and aggressive, and that, like,
yes,
they are super cute and benign. So not nearly as red cap-esque. Wolverine feels good, because then I can also picture it doing like a threat display where it stands up.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I think that there's so much of this animal that is geared towards that aggressive territoriality. That it stands up on its back legs. It has this structure on its head that's a some sort of display. I don't know what it would actually be.
It could be like a mane, I guess. Just like...
Yeah, like a mound of fur or something just that grows up there.
And that is intended to get matted and gross.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
And it is like, that in any other animal, that would typically be a sign of unhealthiness. That fur specifically is meant to get matted.
Yes, that's what it's for.
It grows in a way that holds on to stuff, and it gets matted, and they have a heck of an immune system, so they don't get sick from that.
Yes.
And
it is
gross.
And it smells, it's weird, it's probably got bugs flying around it. So that is this defensive display that could also be a mating display.
Yeah, and a dominance display of like, listen, buddy, don't come in here. Do you see how nasty this thing is? Just think how many things I killed to get this nasty.
Yes.
I had an idea just now of like, because still haven't figured out anything for the kicking, or that a lot of the things said they would throw rocks. A lot of the ones would throw rocks to kill the people. And if they are cave dwellers, there are going to be rocks and stuff around. Mm-hmm. What if they kick the rocks?
They could kick the rocks.
They turn around and kick stuff toward intruders.
In that sort of digging motion of kicking dirt out behind you.
And that they can actually propel it surprisingly. It's not going to kill you probably.
Sure.
But like...
you'll get some rocks kicked
You could get pelted with one of these and it would hurt.
I like that as a defensive behavior because it also prevents them from physically having to confront a big thing that, as intimidating as they're trying to be, they're actually not going to be able to defeat.
Mm-hmm. Well, because then it also has the nice thing of like, they're not actually probably going to kill most things that come in their territory, but if you do fall, it's like a black bear scenario of like, if you do fall prone, or if you do give them an opening, well, then a meal's a meal. Yes. And they are just going to start just burrowing into you.
Well, I like the idea that there are also specialized scavengers, that they can hunt for food, but also that they're extra good at finding and utilizing carcasses, and that helps to mat up the hair and all that. They could even cache prey, the way that some mammals will do, and bring it back to their little home space. But also the thought that this is a lineage of Wolverine or something similar, that if these are Wolverines and they're from up in the farther north than this, it could be that ancestrally they moved along the coastline and were particularly good at utilizing like cliff shelters and beached carcasses.
Yes.
That scavenging behavior allowed them to utilize carcasses that wash up on the beach and also things that gather in rock shelters and caves and stuff, and that allowed them to spread out their territory until they reached the part of the countries that they are famous for. And there were all these human structures there and these old battlefields. It could even be that they had already spread around sort of the European coastal region. And then as humans moved in and started bringing war and started bringing violence, a population of these in that particular area became especially adapted at living in that space, utilizing those kinds of structures, reacting very strongly to the presence of humans. It could be like a particular population like orcas that have both evolved to, but also just learned to deal with human spaces and with humans who you might encounter.
Yes. No, I like that. I like the idea of them caching as well, which you mentioned, because, and this isn't a perfect fit to the myth, but it does mean that if you drive a redcap out of a ruins, there's going to be teeth left over.
Oh, that's true. We didn't come up with an explanation for the teeth.
I think my explanation would be that they are bone chewers and crunchers, which is true for Wolverines and stuff like that. They have very powerful bites and can work on bone.
Sure.
And just chew up to the teeth. So they're just... like if you found a bone cache of a redcap, it's going to be more teeth than not, because they can't
eat the teeth.
Yeah, they just stop there for whatever reason. Either they don't want to chew on them, they don't want to swallow them, or just it's not as worth their time. So you just get lots of teeth left over.
Well, but I also like the idea of, I mentioned the idea of them collecting and sort of building up their nest space, which, to be fair, is a thing we also did with our gremlins.
Yes.
So this is a little bit, but if they are building up a nest space, it could be that they are collecting, weapons and clothing and stuff that they find around the area, either bringing it into their denning space or moving it out of their denning space to sort of clear a space. Either way would have them actively grabbing and moving these things. But also it could be that they just have like certain things that they will collect, like a bowerbird might, for the display of the nest, and maybe they just collect teeth.
Yeah.
That's a thing that is not uncommon for them to find. And it could be just not just teeth. It could be that they decorate with bone or teeth or stuff.
Yeah. There was something else I was going to say. Oh, right. Talking about them dragging stuff back to made me think of the fact that also Wolverines and Mustels are stocky and strong.
Yes, that's true.
Which fits with them being unnaturally strong compared to humans.
Yep.
So I like it. I like this version.
Yeah. Well, and I also like the idea that this is... and I mean, Wolverine seems to be where we're leaning. It could be Badger or something close to a Wolverine.
Yes, there's some cousin of these, but Wolverine's the best stand-in for what we're talking about.
To go back to the idea that we said before, and again, this also is something that we brought up sort of during the Gremlins discussion, but if the Redcap version of them is, for example, a mature male or a mature female, and when they're younger, they just look like a badger. Mm-hmm. And all that sort of aggressive territoriality and the matting of the mane on top of the head, those are features of a sexually mature male that is actively protecting a territory and all that, which could give you that myth that if they don't have the hats, they disappear.
Yes.
Yeah, because you either have redcaps or regular old badger creature.
Mm-hmm. Well, you could also go with, the whole losing the cap thing, be like lions with their manes, where like a less healthy lion will not have as notable a mane, and therefore also can't maintain a pride and dominance of a territory.
So they go away or they die.
You never find a redcap without a redcap in a ruin, because if a redcap can't maintain that, one that's healthier and stronger kicks them out.
Yes, absolutely.
And so you only ever are going to be attacked in these situations. Those who can't maintain a redcap are having to just survive out in the woods.
Yes.
They don't get to have a cave, they don't get to have ruins because everyone else beats them up.
I like that, and we could even add an extra little note to it that, because there are some animals that employ certain defenses, but they are aware of when they have access to those defenses. So like there are certain poisonous animals that their behavior towards threats changes if they have their poison or not.
Yes.
So the poisonous snakes, keelback snakes, get poison from the toads that they eat, and they have a defensive mechanism that they use to ward off predators. But if they're not eating those toads, they don't do that defense mechanism. So it could also be that a redcap knows when it doesn't have a sufficient red cap on its head and won't be aggressive.
Yeah.
Will be much more timid, much more shy, will be hiding in the woods.
Yes.
Because without that, it isn't intimidating or scary enough. That the behavior is linked to that structure.
Absolutely.
So it goes and it runs off and it hides in the woods and it goes to the shore and it eats a bunch of dead stuff until it builds it up. Then it is able to be territorial and aggressive and all that.
Yes, I like that.
That's cool. That's our redcap is weird and it's very fun.
Fun and gross.
I don't know if there are any Mustels that use tools.
Yeah, not that I know of.
And I don't know why a Badger / Wolverine would need to use a polearm.
Yeah. Actually having a martial weapon and actually having iron boots is...
Yes.
That one's kind of like... I could definitely see them having gray feet.
Sure.
Like the coloration on the feet makes it look like they're wearing little boots. And then they kick rocks, and kicking is one of their defensive, like how cats kick.
Maybe they also have wide, flat feet for walking over the snow, so they leave boot-like.
Oh yeah.
Tracks. Well, the reason that I brought up the polearm is because early on when we said it, I was like, all right, what are some animals that might pick up a stick? And this stick has a thing on it, but whatever. And when we were talking about birds or primates, I was like, all right, I could see one of those picking up a stick. I don't know what a badger or a wolverine is going to need to pick up a stick for, So that might just be one of those I'm clearing space.
Yeah, okay, I've got kind of, sort of, maybe.
All right.
Maybe.
This is it. This is the 4th episode.
Yeah.
Let's get weird.
So the closest I could think of was there are, like, chimps will do this, and some other animals do this, will, like, when they're doing displays, will, like, shake trees and do things. And the image I got in my head was a redcap standing up on its hind legs at a sapling and, like, pushing and shaking this small tree.
Yeah.
So that it can make a bunch of noise and rustling to, like, display while it yells or whatever. And at a distance, it looks like a little person brandishing a pole.
I have another thought. We mentioned that they might cache food.
Mm-hmm.
And we mentioned that they specialize in carcasses. And we mentioned that they might decorate their space. What if they do the thing that butcher birds do?
Oh.
And they put carcasses in a space where not only they can access it, but where it is part of the decoration. So butcher birds, dear listeners, are birds that will catch a little mouse or a lizard or something, and then to save it for later, they skewer it on like a cactus spine or on a sharp thing. And usually that's so that it's like up and out of the way so no one else can get to it and then they come back to it.
Yes, it's a larder.
Maybe our redcaps, I almost have a rational explanation for this, are using aspects of their environment to like stack up or lean against whatever carcasses they've dragged. Basically what I'm trying to get at is they stick a pike in the ground and then they put a carcass on top of it to ward off anyone who might want to come into the castle.
I might have this one is definitely,
we're stretching.
is getting cartoony. If they are cave dwellers, there are stalagmites.
That's true.
That they could use the spike-like stone structures that stick up from the ground. They could use those to pin on carcasses and keep them up. And if they are going into abandoned castles and looking for similar structures, they may not be embedding the pike in the ground, but if they find like a weapon rack that is remaining in this abandoned castle, you could find a castle with a redcap in it and bodies skewered on the ends of weapons.
All right.
That gives it's like, but yeah, they slew it.
Yep. It's a little, I don't know how effective a skewer a stalagmite would be.
Right, yeah. Most of them don't end in sharp
I do
things like in cartoons.
That you invoked their ancestry, because that's very cool. I wonder if it could also be just that because normally they kick rocks at you, but if they're in like an old castle, they're like kicking swords.
Yeah, you can just stuff.
Like daggers and stuff.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit of that one might be more of a apocryphal story. But I do like this version of the redcap. I think
like it.
The image of just like a wolverine standing up on its hind legs with its claws out and its teeth all the teeth can also be exaggerated.
Oh yeah,
as a display feature, which we see in a lot of animals.
Mm-hmm.
I like that often we get on these themes with our spooky creatures. Like the last when we talked about the salamander, we talked about how much of their evolution and their selective pressures have been for defending themselves.
Yes.
This is an animal that it has a lot of redundancies, a lot of complementary adaptations for defending a space.
Yes.
I'm going to look scary. I'm going to look gross. Being gross smelling is an extremely common defense mechanism. And mustelids are particularly famous for that.
Yep.
So they probably also smell gross, in addition to the thing on their head. I could also, I could even see, since the mane is meant to be matted, again, like in the last one with salamanders, we talked about secreting a special fluid. I could even see them having a special set of secretions that comes out of the head. It might even just be their own blood.
Yeah.
That using your own blood as a for another purpose is not unheard of in animals.
Nope.
That you're adding your own blood to the pile over time that helps that mound on the head to get extra big and extra gross.
Yeah. Gross. I like it.
This is one of the grossest spooky creatures that we've made.
Yep.
This is one of the spooky creatures I would like to meet the least.
Yep. Absolutely. Just it's would be so unpleasant in so many ways.
Yeah. They would also very possibly be smaller than their relatives because A, they're a little farther south, and they're in an island area. This population, so they could be a little bit, because Wolverines are small, but they're not like those are
Wolverines
hefty.
are beefy. They are a small bear.
to lean into the tiny monsters thing. This is a more isolated population of them that is in this Anglo-Scottish region.
Yeah. Cool. I like it.
This is a cool one.
It's always fun when we do the 4th episode creatures, because even though we picked it out and I took the notes, I still often have a moment of like, did we make a mistake?
Yeah, is this one not gonna, is this just gonna be bad?
Did I pick a bad one?
Yeah, this was super fun.
And they always end up being tons of fun. So there we got a Wolverine that's carcass, a Wolverine cousin or offshoot, carcass specialist.
Anglo-Scottish castle Wolverine. The ruins Wolverine.
Yes. It's got a mane-esque thing on the head to collect the gore.
Yeah, I'm imagining a sort of a mix between a lion's mane and a bison's hump.
Yeah, yep. I think I've also been kind of picturing like the hair on a baboon that like poof.
Well, and it could even be more on the neck and shoulders than it actually is on the head.
Because like the caps they wear are like the sleeping caps that drape down the neck.
Absolutely. Yeah, which enter into a highly aggressive mode when defending a space that they're protecting, which ancestrally was caves, but for this population they have adapted to using ruins of old buildings by people.
And they defend it by squaring up on their hind legs or kicking debris at the intruders and if pushed, just attacking.
Yes.
And full-on violence.
And they are highly specialized scavengers. So they're excellent at making use of areas where there is a lot of carrion to utilize, and that also adds to the gore on top of their head.
Yep. I think this is pretty good. So that's our redcap.
Very cool.
We have our Wolverine redcap. We have our eye gremlin.
Yep. We have our manted fairies.
And
our lizard salamanders.
Yeah.
This is a good... Tiny Monsters has been a lot of fun.
Yeah.
This was one that when we first... this was one especially for me that I have had I had no idea what this one was going to look like.
With this one, I hadn't even had ideas while taking the notes.
I suggested Tiny Monsters. I was like, that would be great. And you were like, cool, what kind of monsters would they be? And I have no idea. That's on you. That's your job.
What, I got to do everything?
I'm the ideas guy.
This was a lot of fun. And I like how creepy a lot of them turned out.
Yeah.
Very unnerving.
These are very intimidating. This is a list. This is 4 spooky creatures that I very much don't want to encounter.
Yeah, that I'd be uncomfortable. Like even the salamander, which is probably cute looking.
Yes. No, you're dangerous.
Yeah.
That is a very dangerous
Please
animal.
no, I don't want to touch you. Please don't come in my yard. I like it.
Very cool. Hey, listeners, all the discussion that we have here on Spook-E is just off the top of our head for fun, riffing. If you have additional ideas on how you might evolve a redcap that we discussed in this episode, absolutely let us know. You can send us a message or an email, or you can join the Discord, where we have a Spook-E channel exactly for conversations like this.
It's the perfect place. There'll be tons of people talking about it. If you want to share fan art,
if you happen to art,
we are always open to fan art. We love getting to see the visualizations people create for our creatures.
We will even put it up on our website if you're cool with it.
Yep. So just tag us or put it in the Discord or send it to us. And if you're up for us putting on the website, let us know how you'd like to be credited. This is the last of our Spook-E, all 4 of them done.
It is the last Saturday in October, and therefore we are out of Saturdays and out of days for Spook-E.
We have still a bit more to go because we have QT next Saturday.
Yes, Cute E, where we take a break from monsters and do cute stuff.
Yeah. So I after we've done what we've done, I would love to hear people's guesses for what you think QT is going to be.
I would absolutely not have guessed.
Yep.
What we chose for
Yep.
Cutie.
Because like you said, fairies was going to be it.
It was going to be fairies.
And now that we've taken off the list, who knows? And then after that, the following Saturday after this, we have the live stream where we can discuss spooky stuff. And you guys can all ask why we didn't do goblins and things like that.
Absolutely. November 9th, 3 p.m. Eastern Time on YouTube. Anyone is welcome to join, and we'll chat and just sort of have an after chat about Spooky and what the future might hold and what this year held. Last year we did a Spooky live stream, and it was tons of fun.
It is so wonderful. Stay tuned for that.
Happy Spook-E season, everybody.
Have a happy Halloween and whatnot.
And also a happy Halloween.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Common Descent podcast. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and check our WordPress blog for pictures and links after each episode. Huge thanks to our patrons whose support helps keep this podcast running and who get access to bonus goodies on Patreon. The song you're hearing is called On the Origin of Species by Protodome, which we found at ocremix.org. Thanks again for listening. We hope you'll join us next time.